Captain's Log Supplemental.
Hey Jeremy, you know those race cars you're busy building?
Yeah, I do.
You,
I
you,
got one
you
that I'm looking at every day.
you know what I don't see you working on?
You don't see me working on the amazing Sentinel system yet.
That's true. It would take all of 10 minutes for you to have one.
And it's very quick and easy to install.
It is. It is. And we could watch you when we are not at the race with you and see how you're doing. And then we can call you up when you get out of the car and tell you everything you did wrong.
And I love that because so many years I've been driving and not been able to see what I'm doing.
I know.
And now we can.
I know. You know what I'd like to do with the video? My most favorite thing is I take the video and I load it on YouTube and then I send it to my coach and say, look at 26 minutes and 17 seconds. Look at this one lap and tell me what I can do better. And every single time, you know what they say?
Everything.
Exactly. Precisely. So with the Sentinel system, you get instantaneous feedback plus useful feedback that unfortunately is accurate for my driving.
I think it's accurate for all of our driving.
Pretty much. Yeah, that's probably true. Yep. But you need to get one in your car, sir.
Yes, I do. And with the discount code that you're going to tell everybody, they can save 10% on this awesome system.
Yep. Trouble free. I haven't had an issue getting video every time we've gone out with the Sentinel. It's always worked. Can't say the same for some of the other systems we've tried. So I don't know. It's on the podcast notes down there. Don't do it while you're driving, though. We like to have our listeners live. It's good.
From the great halls of their house, there are assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision, Bill Fisher, and their soon-to-be Wonder Woman, Vicky Fisher, and our Captain Marvel and head flight trainee, Jennifer Scripchuk. Their mission: to fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes in Training Team.
Welcome to the Garage Heroes in Training Podcast. I'm going to be one of the hosts for this episode. My name is Bill. Who else is hosting?
I'm Audra.
Miss Audra, you were my conscience. You reminded me what day of the week it was, and we have a guest. So my faux pas, sorry for being late, guest. I'll tell you who you are soon. Well, actually, you know who you are. Nobody knows who you are besides you. Well, whatever. I'm not rattled at all. It's fine. From Fields Auto Works, we have Rob Fields. Welcome to the podcast, sir.
Thanks so much.
So we have known about you largely through Slip Angle. And in spite of you knowing Mr. Jabay, we still like you. It's fine. Adam's awesome. He's one podcast away from getting his co-hosting hoodie, which I have yet to make, but that's okay. So you are you have had quite the history in racing, not only in the steering of the wheel and pushing of the pedals, but also in the support development. Just about everything I can think of that I don't know how to do, you kind of know how to do. Can we kind of just go over a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, no, I've always been considerably more successful behind the laptop or holding a tool than I have been in the seat behind the wheel. So I never really had a chance of escaping the racing world. My dad raced Formula cars and sports racers and was even a dealer for Lolas and some other models of race car. And so I grew up around that, did a lot of, some early karting, some early driving, went off and had an aerospace engineering career. And in the midst of that, still made time to do racing engineering work, and eventually took over a customer's product business, along with continuing to do the engineering work. And then eventually excuse me, my dad and I decided to launch a full-time effort to build cars of our own, and that's what's landed me here today. So,
So when building a car,
Sorry.
oh, sorry, Audra.
Well,
When
I was
build,
kind of curious, what kind of cars are you building? Like what?
yeah, so and this kind of ties into the story a little bit of how we got here. When we were looking at what kind of cars we wanted to build, our current models, the Cardinal and the Toyota, now the TRZ, which is our new upcoming Roadster. The Cardinal and Toyota were the sixth and seventh cars that my father Bob has taken from a paper drawing to reality. It's just everything before that was either a formula car or a sports racer, a handful, if more than one were being made. And so he was talking about going, more back into that world. And I kind of said, Dad, everybody we know from that world is kind of gone, right? Lola folded. A lot of the specialty, constructors either had to diversify into other industries or got bought out by other industries, or and so I said, the blooming market really are track day cars, right? The major OEMs are making special versions of all their high performance vehicles specifically to be able to handle the track and provide a basis for their racing programs. And if we can solve some of the issues that more affordable cars that people like to track have without launching them into the pricing stratosphere that some of those track only cars start out in, there's a real market there, and maybe more so than a formula car or a sports racer. And so we build cars focused on being able to enjoy them at the track, enjoy them at, whether it's autocross, through track days, all the way up through, club endurance racing, club sprint racing, stuff like that. We're trying to provide an alternate but viable platform for people, rather than cutting up expensive street cars or old street cars. So everything we're building has the opportunity to be street legal, but they do not come out of the factory that way. It's up to the customers if they want to assemble them in such a way that they can be registered. And that obviously requires a great deal of communication between us and the customer about their specific needs, and what they intend to use the car for. We're small enough that we can accommodate a pretty wide variety of requests. Our Toyota mid-engine model, we have three different engine families going into the first three cars. So we're taking kind of almost a if it fits it ships approach on powertrains for those. But it's really, we're focused on lightweight, affordable, which is always a relative term in this industry, but lightweight, affordable, and serviceable cars.
So are they all built? Are they all custom built?
So they're all hand built. They're on one of two chassis. So we have the Series 100 chassis, which is what the Toyota platform is built on. And then we have the Series 200 chassis, which the Cardinal Coupe and then the TRZ, which is the new Roadster, are built on. So the Series 100 chassis is more conventional mid-engine prototype style, double A arm pull rod suspension, dry weights depending on engine selection in the 1,700 to 2,000 pound range. The Series 200 is a conventional front engine sports car type chassis. It also employs the double A arm pull rod suspension, which is kind of more formula car tech rather than conventional street car tech, but it really lends itself well to these cars that are kind of a hybrid between a pure race car and an old school sports car.
On your website right now, they look really cool. What's the time frame from order to actually having it built?
Right now, we're about a 6 month lead time on Cardinals and about a year out on Toyotas. TRZ is also right now is about a 9 month or so lead time. We're definitely early days compared to the production numbers we want to be doing, right? So right now, chassis that are leaving our shop are in the teens, and we've got orders through the 30s. But we're really, tooling up to do hundreds of Series 200 based cars between the Cardinal and the TRZ. And the Toyota we're planning to limit to about 150 units on.
So, anybody who knows our podcast knows I am technical guy, non-mechanical guy, and definitely not artsy guy. So let's just get rid of my totally uncomfortable. How do you come up with the pretty shapes? Because I have no idea how to do that. Is that like something you're good at, or you give that to somebody else? Or because I can't even draw a circle without having sides on it.
So the majority of that is actually Bob's talent. So he made a whole career out of design in various forms. Whether it was designing cars, designing houses, designing telecom network systems. He was a graduate from an art-based design program, and spent his whole career drawing things in some form or another. So we kind of say he does kind of the architecture level drawing out of the cars, right? So when he tackles a new model, it's really he's coming up with the broad strokes and a lot of the specific layouts and stuff like that. At some point, it transitions over to me and some of the other engineering team members, and we turn that into, all right, well, here's an actual model of the exact body work, the nuts and bolts, the specific fasteners and brackets. And that's where it really makes the transition from the concept level into the execution of the car.
Okay, because if you did all of that by yourself, I was gonna ask if your middle name was Da Vinci, but that's not necessary right now. So we're
even he had assistants, right? So
that's what I hear. I don't know.
No, I mean, so that is one of the really big kind of common misconceptions, is that because I'm in it, fortunately or unfortunately, I've kind of been thrust into the public eye as the face of this thing. And the reality is we've been as many as 26 people here at different times. So, our team is on the smaller side, but there was a little bit of a misconception for a while that it was me and one or two other people in a shed somewhere bolting stuff together. And then when people come see the factory and see all the people working and all the tooling, all the machinery, and I think there's kind of a transformative moment when people walk into the final assembly shop and see all the chassis and parts and go, "Oh, you guys are pretty damn serious." So.
Yeah. I don't know. I've got two more questions before we get into the bulk of more details on the cars. But, you've got a racing background. You've also got a race car design, manufacturer, business background. Any goals or bucket list items you want either for yourself or for your cars, series, tracks, whatever?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I think in terms of shorter term stuff, there's a couple of events that'd be really great. We knocked one of them out this year with the One Lap of America, which I've been dying to participate in for a long time. And we should probably talk a little more about that at some point.
Oh, it's coming. That's what I'm trying to get there.
But, I think there are a number of events that kind of fit in that, right? So Pikes Peak is another one that I'd love to field a car, one of ours that we manufacture at some point. And then at some point, I really don't, as a longer term goal, I really don't see it happening with the current iteration of our cars. But at some point, I would really like to get some version of one of our models homologated at an FIA level to go run in not just the high level club series, but potentially in the real series pro leagues. So
wow.
That's an extremely resource intensive process and not in the immediate future, but that definitely as a longer term bucket list item would be one of them.
Yeah, that's kind of awesome. I'm a manufacturing guy, so give me a facility, and I'm like, oh, let me see. Uh, Miss Audrey, you want to take Vicky's favorite, or you want me to pink this one?
Take Vicky's favorite.
Oh, yeah, Vicky's favorite question, Rob. You're not going to get away without this. She constantly is looking for. I think her artsy girl takes over, and she wants to know what your racing philosophy is, either when you're behind the wheel or when somebody's behind one of your wheels.
Racing philosophy, I think, especially as a manufacturer, the priorities kind of are, safety, then lightness, then drivability, right? So one of my prior businesses that I was involved in made a lot of aerodynamics components, wings and splitters and stuff like that. And we were constantly finding that the absolute ultimate performance from the vehicle perspective was not going to result in lower lap times if the driver was uncomfortable or didn't feel good driving the car. And so, taking that approach of, it has to be safe. And then from a performance standpoint, we really have to make it as light as we can. And then from there, we focus on, driver comfort, feedback, all those kind of things. And then shortly after that, it is reliability and serviceability. But especially coming from an aerospace background, safety is always kind of the top rung. So
for sure. So, sir, you raced in the one lap of America. Well, your car raced in the one lap of America.
The car, yeah,
with a friend of ours, Mr. Scott Robertson, and I believe it was with Eric this year. Is that right? Eric
Yep.
with an A, because
Yeah.
can't make it easy on anybody trying to write episode notes. But so what? I believe this was, I don't know if VIN's the right number, but number one of the Cardinals. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's chassis number 2. It's the original development mule, prototype test car, fill in the blank, whatever word you want to say. That car. So a couple quick notes on that, right? It is pretty representative of the production cars from a performance standpoint. You got to wring it out a little harder than the production cars do to get the same lap times, but it's pretty close. But it is not representative of the production cars in terms of a lot of the bolt-on parts and a lot of that kind of stuff. We were so focused on, and certainly on fit and finish, we were so focused on getting it out there and testing and showing that, hey, this design, this platform that we're coming up with, it's going to do all of the things that we say it's going to do before we go out and take a whole bunch of people's money. And so we really, tried to focus with that car on getting out there, learning a whole bunch, and we did that. And that was, for the most part, 4 years ago now. And then since then, it's been mostly rental. We'll come out with an option when we want to develop it, so we'll put it on that car first and try it out, stuff like that. But when Scott and Eric approached us about taking it on the one lap this year, we said we're all for it. We'd be thrilled to send you with a car. This is the one we've got. This is the one that's available for that use. And so in the context of the one lap, there are folks who have a lot of time driving the cars that they're in. They've done recon to all the tracks that they're going to drive, where they're very familiar with that. A lot of them, or whatever. A lot of times they'll modify the car specifically for the one lap. The complete preparation for us was, I promised them I'd put some temporary windows in and make the rear hatch open so that they could carry all their stuff. And
he's used to roughing
they
it
had one day in the car at Mid Ohio, and that was the sum total preparation. So
Oh wow. So how did it do?
did really well. So our big public goals were top half, finish the whole thing, and take a top 10 in one of the events. It came 33rd out of 80. It won its class. It beat the only Ferrari on the event. It came 5th on the dry skid pad, and honestly probably should have been higher than that. But you know that's a tough one to pin down. That's a unique driving event.
We'll blame the drivers,
then,
Rob. It's fine.
Sorry.
We'll blame the drivers. It's fine.
You can always blame the drivers. That's the time-honored tradition in race engineering. Yeah, so we met all of our big goals that we kind of said out loud publicly. I think everybody secretly was like, this car should really be, you know, but for the first year, no recon, very limited one lap specific prep. And all the prep we did really was around the transits, not around the performance of the car. The other thing that was a big unknown going into it, the car had never been on those Bridgestones before. So it was a little bit of a roll of the dice to pick a tire we'd never used. Scott was convinced that was the right answer. And I said, this is your race, you're running it. You get to live with the good or the bad of that decision. And I think he was pretty happy with how that played out. It might have been a little more tire than I think they needed for the one lap format, because they weren't really getting a lot of heat into them.
Because the car's
in
so
the
light.
warm-up lap. Well, at the finish of the event, they still had enough tire life and brake pad life and brake rotor life that they could have done another two years worth of one lap on what they had there.
Did they get back with the second year yet, or are they still working on that?
I don't know what we're gonna do for year two, but yeah, no. So it was a success in many ways. That event, you cannot expect to go through that event without some difficulties. They had some mechanical things along the way, specifically around the powertrain controls side of things, that were pretty unique to that car, and also they by the end of the event seem to have overcome. It's so challenging to have somebody else running your car and know how limited you can be in assisting them because of the format of the competition. But they did a great job of overcoming those things. And we kind of all were sitting there at the end going, man, if it hadn't been for some of those, just think where we could have placed. But on the flip side, you go, yeah, but for all you know, you would have ended up in a faster session and had a wreck or gone off the track or whatever and not finished at all. So you can't speculate too much about the what ifs. You take the good with the bad and be happy with a good result at the end. So
yeah, so it sounds like you came out with learnings for just basically the setup of the car, but then also for doing one lap again. There's some different things that you'll do.
Oh, certainly. I mean, it was one of those things that we all knew going in, that we were kind of throwing together a pretty quick effort, just get something together that was going to represent reasonably well, and we think it did. I think we definitely learned a lot about the street driving of the car. We were all so concerned. I shouldn't say so concerned, but that was our greatest area of concern going into it, was that, we'd put maybe 60, 70,000 track miles on that chassis at this point, but probably only 5,000 street miles. And so, they effectively doubled the street mileage of the car during the event. And with the exception of, I think there was, one of the mornings they had a couple loose jam nuts that they had to address after some particularly rough roads. I think other than that, from a road driving perspective, it did really well. I think it was probably, if it wasn't the most fuel efficient on transits, it had to have been close. They were clocking 35 miles to the gallon at like 75. And 30 miles to the gallon at one lap speeds.
76.
Won't tell on them, right? But to be getting that kind of mileage, and it's a very slippery car from a drag perspective. It's a very light car, so that was really cool to see. They also had the distinction of being the first ones to encounter the law enforcement in one of our vehicles.
I was going to say they did get a trophy for the event, sort of.
Yeah, they stopped. They got stopped. So there was one. I think it was the Monday evening. The whole group was, for the most part, trying to outrun a big wave of storms as they were coming from Colorado through to like Kansas City area. And so I think a number of people got stopped by Kansas State Patrol, but I think Eric was driving, got stopped. I think they like cited him not only for speed, but also for failing to indicate as he was pulling over, which is just an extra little cherry on top for that. But I mean, my big fear, having never had that happen, you know, it's titled in kind of a special way because it falls under that specialty, you know, special production category.
Right.
And it was not in the state of Ohio where that title is from and all that stuff. So my big fear was that at some point, some law enforcement officer was going to stop them and go, well, look, I don't know what this thing is, so it's coming with me, right? And thankfully, neither time that they got stopped was it an issue at all. They took a quick look at the documentation and the tag on the car and cited them as normal, I guess, would be the way to say it.
Does the car have like a VIN number on it, or?
It does have a VIN, so the cars come from us with a serial number. If you go get it inspected for street legality, they assign a VIN at that time and provide a VIN tag, and I think actually they have to rivet it to the car themselves. I know in Ohio they do. They physically attach the VIN tag to the vehicle, and not always particularly well. So,
yeah, I never really thought about it because you know we usually take cars and then some say modify, some say molest. It depends on your point of view. I mean, you know, if you're the car, I think it's more the latter, but whatever.
Was this caged?
Yeah, so it has our base chassis incorporates a very basic roll cage. And then for cars that people are wanting to do a wheel-to-wheel competition with, we have options to add to the cage to make it an SCCA or NASA compliant cage.
So that's what you would take into consideration if somebody's looking for a street legal version.
Yeah, I mean, it's really it all depends on the use case, right? So if somebody came through the door and said, I want it with this motor and this transmission and this ECU, and I want it to be street legal, and I want to race it in NASA ST1, we would say, great, here's your quote. Here's what it would look like, right?
Right.
So we have a standard options list, which is kind of the normal menu, so to speak. And then we have it at the bottom of it, we have a thing that we call, custom competition prep. And you can basically write in whatever racing class or classes you would like the car to be compliant for, and we'll quote based on that.
So being a luxury mammal, how's egress and ingress? I'm more worried about egress, honestly, with a race car. But if we cage these, how accommodating are they to the larger people?
Yeah, it's really not bad. So like we've got a handful of converted streetcar based race cars around here. Grid life cars and NASA cars and SCCA cars and stuff. I would say the Cardinal without cage with the standard seats is probably easier than any caged race car out there. With a cage and with a high-sided racing seat, the Cardinal is similar to getting in and out of like a Spec 944 or something of that size and nature.
Okay. Not the terrible side.
No, it's really not. To be honest, because of the way the cockpit is configured, seat choice makes a huge difference. There are a couple of seats that have high sides for the lower portion and not so much. They don't have a lot of blockage around like the middle section of the seat. And we prefer those for like if you're going to put a containment seat in, the Sawbelt X pad is the one that we normally go for, because
Okay.
it gives you a nice wide opening at the middle of the seat,
Yeah.
while still having the high-sided bolsters at the bottom and the halo around you at the top.
Yeah, because I haven't seen your car in person yet, although I'm more than willing if you ever want a factory
Yeah.
tour or whatever, I'll drive out. But the like the Camaros, the later model Camaros, I like them from a performance perspective, but I took my helmet to the dealership and it physically won't go through the window because I
Right.
had
Yeah, no, I know that's a big concern for a lot of people with that specific model of car. It's
yeah, so I couldn't tell. It looked like it was open, but it's hard to tell without like standing next to it or trying to get in or whatever. So that's why I was curious.
sure. No, it's not bad. The Scioto is a little bit more restrictive on that. The nature of that car, it's not quite KTM Crossbow levels of complexity in and out, but it's traditional prototype car gullwing style doors.
Oh wow. Okay.
So in terms of getting in the car, it's very simple. You kind of step over the side of the sill and slide down the seat, much like you would a Formula car or some other closed wheel prototype style cars. Um, Egress, if you are in a conventional orientation, right? If you're right side up,
Hmm.
it's very easy.
Okay.
It's similar to getting in the car. Where we as designers have to be much more concerned is when you get into unconventional orientations. So if the car is on its side or upside down or things like that. I mentioned the Expo because that particular car with the opening center cockpit as opposed to conventional doors, that's a huge safety concern for them. They have to have an escape hatch in the car, things like that, to ensure that a driver can get out in those types of situations. So we put some real design effort in around the window opening size, how difficult it is to get out through things like that, trying to make sure that we're not just thinking of the 95% of the time that things are exactly as you expect. There's 5% of the time these corner cases where that's where any more racing as safe as it is, all the real issues happen in those very, sporadic corner cases. So
Right. Right. So so I'm not sure if you prefer a test mule or a prototype or a very
yeah.
early production. I'm not sure which one fits your happy spot, but this car was kind of not uh originally conceived as, hey, this is the car we're going to go do one lap in 2024. This was kind of the let's see what we do, let's play with it a little bit. So it's early on. Anytime you start development, you start off with, hey, we're going to use one of these, and then you say, oh, later on, it's like, oh, well, that's not the best plan or something like that. But I know you had from listening to Scott and talking to Scott, there was an issue that I think they battled for a few days, and then maybe it was due to an alternator that's not in the new or current production cars. But is there any types of issues that you saw from, because one lap's kind of brutal on these cars. It's a mix of track and street and a lot of street. Um, is there anything that you learned from doing the one lap that you're like, oh, we need to change one of these, or any upgrades that you see from as a result of just playing there?
Sure. So yeah, so the alternator was the source of what eventually was the controls issues that they battled through the week. When that alternator died, it took a couple of things with it. High voltage does strange things to modern controls, right? So,
Hmm.
but yeah, you're correct in that alternator is specific to that one. We originally planned for just the stock alternator as the crate motor comes. We found on that first one that our frame rail spacing, specifically that one of the suspension mounts, ends up being tight enough that you can use the stock alternator on that specific car, chassis 002, but it makes service of one of the suspension areas very difficult. And so we elected to run a smaller form factor lightweight racing alternator, which is what ultimately bid us on this event. So all subsequent cars are on the stock Ford OE alternator. Haven't seen any similar issues in any of the cars that have been out running, including the OO3 chassis, which was kind of the durability tester. But in terms of one lap specific lessons, I think we learned a good bit about like cabin airflow. We learned a good bit about some of the like weather sealing and a lot of the like if you're racing in the rain, you get a lot of specific behaviors in terms of where water flows, what's happening aerodynamically. It's totally different when you're talking about having to sit at stoplights, having to go through gas stations and rest stops. It's just, you're not moving the water around in the same ways to all the same places, right? And so we learned a good bit about some of the weather intrusion prevention stuff that we need to be doing on the production cars. So those were all really valuable lessons from the one lap. I think we also, learned a lot about what, from a chassis dynamics perspective, what people are going to want out of these. Almost all of our customers are not stepping out of other lightweight cars into these cars. And so they're not going to immediately know things like, hey, there's a certain amount of excess, road tracking and steering effort if you don't have power steering in the car, just because it's so much lighter than what you're used to, right? And or things like that, right? You've got a whole lot more brakes than you think you do because they're only starting to communicate with you. They're not about to lock up. But if you've never driven a manual brakes car, you don't know that, right? So there was a lot of like, driver car interface that I think throwing somebody as with the background and talent that Scott and Eric have, throwing those guys at that car with very little prep and sending them through kind of a ringer in terms of both highway driving and track driving. It informed for us a lot of what people's transition into one of those cars from a normal street car might look like.
You're muted, daughter.
Sorry, dog. Happens. So what's new with the TRZ that's different from the Cardinal and the Scioto?
Sure. So the TRZ is built on the same Series 200 chassis that the Cardinal is. It's just an alternate body style, alternate roll cage. So, the Cardinal is styled after 60s Italian sport coupes. And that's a very sweet spot of nostalgia for a lot of people, but not everybody. It's a very divisive car aesthetically. There are, frankly, probably more people who don't care for the way that car looks than do. But the reality is it's inspired by some really successful and really cool cars from that era. It's an extremely functional design in terms of the ability to put a whole bunch of stuff in it and go to the track and have a roof over your head and all this stuff. Those guys did the whole one lap with that car with no trailer, no roof rack, none of that stuff, and had a bunch of spares with them that they didn't use in that time. So that's all great. That's all functional. The TRZ kind of laughs at that and does the opposite, right? It's pure roadster. It's as light as it can be, as simple as it can be. The specific design of that car actually comes from outside of our organization. We consulted on that platform as it was originally conceived by a design firm that's still here in the Columbus area, but they had originally thought of a different arrangement on chassis and some of the suspension stuff. And we consulted on that car some. A couple other people had a hand in it at various times. Eventually, they kind of shelved it and said, we're not prepared to move this forward into a production state, and approached us about taking it. And we kind of said, we see a real market for a car like this, especially with the same underpinnings that are already being successful for the Cardinal. But our chassis philosophy and some of our other stuff was just so different that it just made more sense for us to find a home for it within kind of the Series 200 chassis family. And so that's the approach that we've taken. We've taken some of the initial development body work. We got all of the old molds and tooling and the CAD models and all that stuff. And so we've taken some of that early body work for that model and moved them over onto a Series 200 chassis and gone through both in the CAD space and physical space, verifying all the changes that have to be made, which it's frankly a shorter list than any of us ever anticipated. But ultimately, underneath everything that makes the Cardinal successful from a mechanical standpoint moves over. There's some differences in what the roll structure will need to look like in order to be track legal, as opposed to just a fun street performer. But from a mechanical and chassis standpoint, everything from drivetrain to brakes to suspension, steering, all of it moves right over. So we're really excited about looking at a very different portion of the market, who probably grew up looking at different cars, have a different aesthetic, have maybe different priorities for what their sports car does and how it fits into their life. And we're excited to serve those needs.
Great. When do you expect to have those models available?
So we are actively taking orders for them now. The first one that will be publicly available for like demo laps and stuff like that is right now it's on track for late July. It's right now we're in this interesting spot where the Toyota has really moved, out of private development only testing into a place where we're getting ready to do quite a bit more public work with it. We've had a lot of like invite only type stuff so far with it, to get some of our early potential customers an early opportunity to see what they're looking at. The TRZ being less of a transition for the Series 200 chassis than we expected. It's ending up ready a little bit sooner, frankly, than I think we'd envisioned. And now we have to make sure that we don't kind of supersede the public triumph of the Toyota with, also here's this new other thing, right? So we're trying not to do too many things all at the same time, which is always a struggle when you're a small business. But I think we are expecting like late July, we'll be able to do some of that kind of public, come take a look. There's right now on the site for the TRZ, it's all renderings. The first one with all that moved over bodywork and all that stuff, it physically here, I can kind of see a corner of it. It rolls around, but it's not quite ready for public consumption.
Wish list for the model after that? I know you're already thinking about it.
I don't know. I think realistically what we're envisioning is probably we want, long term, we probably want in that Series 200 chassis family, we probably want, 2 or 3 variations. The Series 100 chassis family, we probably want 2 variations. And then I think once, and this is many tens of cars away from where we are today, but once we get to a point where we're not having to explain who we are and what we do in every conversation because we're known a little better and all that, at that point, I think when people know what a Cardinal is, they know what a Toyota is, they know what a TRZ is, then we can start talking about, well, here's a different version of the Cardinal, right? Maybe this is the really evil, mean, competition-only version of the Cardinal. Maybe this is a, super luxury, high-end, tailor-made version of the TRZ, right? one of the nice things about having such flexible capability in-house, you know, we can do a really wide variety of things, and the platform will, you know, these different chassis platforms will hold up to a wide variety of uses. So I wouldn't be shocked if, you know, 4 or 5 years from now we're talking about, you know, some silly Safari version of a Cardinal, or, you know, some really wild open concept version of a Toyota. But for right now, we've got more than the work we can handle just getting our name out there and building the cars that have been ordered. You know, we like to joke that just if we just fill all of the orders that we already have, we'll have surpassed the Vector car company in terms of fulfillment. And if you think about how many people know what Vector was, all the number of posters on people's bedroom walls with those cars, right? It's, you know, getting to that number of cars is a pretty high threshold to cross, and it's going to take a lot of our efforts, all of our efforts, just to get to that point. So we'll worry about what's beyond that as we sort of come over and crest some of those thresholds.
Rob, I thought I liked you, but then I was playing around in the background with your website and I saw that the Cardinal doesn't cost as much as I thought it was, and now I hate you. Audra, we need one of these.
Yeah,
I
we
think we
totally
need.
do.
I think we need to. I think we need to. I think we could use
Clearly.
a cross trainer.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Don't tell
I
Rob.
mean, there's so many different configurations.
I know.
And
Oh.
once we get into, you know, arguing about what would go into each car, we would need a couple.
Well, I mean, you know, if we have to, you know, whatever, it's fine. We can come up with something.
Team builds, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It's a good thing Rob can't hear us right now. That's great.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Well, it's a really good thing that our head salesperson can't hear you right now. I'm pretty relaxed on that. Others of us have the pit bull mentality. So
No, Rob, it's a really good thing that Vicky can't hear us right now, but that's my problem, not yours. But she's a racer too, so that's fine. She won't mind. She just hates having to fix all these different cars, but that's fine. So you've got these three awesome cars. Well, two and a half. We'll go with 2.5 right now, maybe.
Well, I mean, realistically, they serve such different needs that 3 is probably a reasonable way to phrase it.
But I think you guys do other stuff, and I didn't want to gloss that over just because, you know, I mean, cars are sexy, you know, but you know, there's you know, the sexy part of the business, and then there's the other part that, you know, maybe where you actually make money, or hopefully you make money in all of it. But you know, I know you guys do a lot of stuff, and there will be a part 2 of this if you'll tolerate us again, but where we get into a little bit more of the technical engineering setup kind of fun stuff, because you sent out something and I said I would love to put those on my car, but I wouldn't even know how to begin to set them up, so I would just screw things up. So but what else does Field AutoWorks do?
Well, so Fields AutoWorks is pretty dedicated to, you know, selling and manufacturing those 3 models. It fits within not an umbrella, but another sort of part of what we do, which is fields engineering. And through fields engineering, we have FB Autosport, which is sort of the arrive and drive, race prep, racing rentals, things like that. Certain like club level driver development and race engineering. Also inside fields engineering, we've done a lot of development work for some of the OEs, some of the major car companies. You know, all of that stuff. It's kind of like the warehouse at the end of Indiana Jones, right? Where the stuff just gets crated up and taken away, never to be seen again. And we always kind of cautiously hope that we'll see some of the stuff we work on at some of the car shows, or some of the, you know, they'll get shown as concepts or whatever. But I think realistically, almost all of them are going into vaults somewhere that, you know, maybe will be seen someday, 30 years from now. You know, oh, can you believe so and so almost made of this, right? So, so we've done some of that type of stuff as well. Typically, though, right now we're much more focused on Fields Auto Works, getting customers cars built and out the door. We've scaled back pretty considerably on the racing side of things, like FB Autosport and some of that stuff. I spent a lot of time doing flying engineering work and data acquisition work and stuff like that. And it is so difficult to have anything else be productive if you're trying to manage it from the road. 2022, between Fields Auto Works obligations and Fields Engineering obligations, I think it was on the road in some form 38 weeks of that year, and trying to run a factory at home at the same time with that just wasn't gonna fly. So
Yeah, I probably didn't make you popular at home, or maybe it did.
Still familiar with that.
Yeah, a little bit, tiny bit. It's part of having, company in 3 different time zones. So we could. I want to get into the fun stuff that you know so much more about, but I don't think we have time to be conscientious to your schedule. So you have an open invite to come back on and explain to me why I've screwed up everything that I've ever done on a car. And if you only learn from making mistakes, I am getting very smart. That's all I'm going to say about setting up a car. So, but we do.
It's an integral part of the learning process for sure.
I think, but we do have a little fun thing that we can squeeze in a little bit and just go through it. It's we call it the Fast and Furious Storytime questions, which has nothing to do with the movie, but they're a little bit of fun that we have, and sometimes it's entertaining, and sometimes it's just entertaining to us. But it's our podcast, so we get to do these kind of things. It's fine.
Great.
Exactly. Miss Audrey, do you want to pick one?
Sure, actually. So I guess my question would be if you are still getting out to the track at all, and when you are, what are you choosing?
Yeah, no, I am. I'm still doing a lot of the very early development driving on some of these cars. So not the like, hey, this thing's 80% figured out and it's time to go dial it in. I'm doing the like, hey, what's going to fall off kind of driving, right? So thankfully it's way more put together than cars used to be in the old days when you would go start shaking stuff down. But I am definitely still getting out to the track quite a bit. I'm also spending a lot of time doing, less of it than I used to, but doing a lot of support and work for people that I'm still close with or who really need a hand. I've had to come in a pinch sometimes for engineering and crew work for good friends, and I'm happy to do that, and I like getting back to the track that way. Before I, went so hardcore on Fields Auto Works specifically, I really enjoyed open wheel stuff. So a little bit of time in like Continentals and 2000 type cars. I had a chance to do a couple of the Arrive and Drive like racing school series type stuff with that, which was always great. So good to beat up on somebody else's equipment for a change. And then I've got a rental Sunday Cup Mini that we use for grid life and for track days and stuff like that. And it's one of the old Mini Cooper coupes, like the backwards hat looking car. And we adore that car. It's fully caged, fully everything. When Grid Life came out and said we're going to do endurance races, which they did one at least, right? But when they came out and said they did that, we built that car for that immediately. Just like, yep, we're doing it, we're all in, we're whatever. And so now it's a rental and a Sunday Cup, competitive car, and it's the only car I've ever driven on street tires that could take turn one at Mid-Ohio flat, which said a
That's kind of
lot
fun.
about how slow we were all going. But
That's pre-repave too, so you didn't even have the good stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah.
Audra, a rental mini Sunday Cup car.
Oh my goodness.
We have several.
So I know I'm
that's a
going
problem.
off script a little bit, but what was your best happy moment in testing these cars?
Ooh, for me personally driving, I reset my best lap time around Mid-Ohio at one point in a Cardinal, and that was a big moment.
Mhm.
The I think it was slightly superseded by the first time that we had a like show up, like we had a potential customer arranged a test drive. We used to do a test drive rental program where people could rent the car as a test drive to check it out and see if they wanted to buy it. Guy showed up, a total non-believer, did a session in the car, came out, started filling out the order guide, and that was a really cool. That was a great moment.
I would say. All right.
So
So I'm torn. I've got two questions that I want to ask you, so I'll probably just end up asking them both. But I'm just going to pretend
that's
like
fun.
I'm only going to ask you one now. So All right. So you build your own cars. That's cool. That's awesome. But do you have a dream car that you want to build as a race car to start from?
Um, so the short answer for me, I really, I don't know, I really liked the old like BMW 2002s and
Uh-huh.
stuff like that. And I'd love to have just a really wickedly stupid, vintage 2002 like vintage race car. I think that'd be up there on the list, just top of mind. Um,
We can ask it again when you come on the next time, and you can have a different car. It's fine. We don't mind.
that's
We
fine.
allow way more than one car. It's fine.
Well, so the part of why I'm having trouble with this is there's a car I'm in the middle of working on that kind of fills that in a slightly different way. So I mentioned my dad's racing career. One of the first cars he ever built was a 1956 Alfa Giulietta Spider,
Oh wow.
and that car it was out on the West Coast. It just never stopped racing. It's changed hands like 12 or 13 times, but it's been racing and racing and racing, and so. Um, that specific one, it became known as Sophia. It became like earned its own name and whatever. And because it never stopped racing and it was owned by some really successful racers, it's almost certainly the winningest Alfa Romeo in North America and very probably in the whole world. And so as a result of that and doing some research and trying to support that claim and whatever, we kind of accidentally drove the value up a little bit for the current owner, and I can't buy the car back for my dad. And so I went out and found another Giulietta Spider production car, race car project that was kind of a basket case project in somebody's warehouse, and bought that as a birthday gift for my dad a couple years ago.
Mhm.
And we've been in the process of building that into a real vintage race car. And so right now, in a very pragmatic sense, the dream is to get that thing done. And it is feeling more and more like a dream as all of our resources go into the factory. So
The shoemaker never the shoemaker family, right?
yeah, the cobbler's kids have no shoes.
Exactly. Sounds fun. Miss Audrey, you got one?
So is that would you classify that as the car that got away, or do you have another one?
Ooh, that's a tough question. That one, I'm still optimistic about that one rejoining the fold at some point. Um, so I don't know about that. I would say there's a red Z4M Roadster track day car that when I owned the Aero company, I put the wing on that car for the guy, and told him, I was doing it. If you ever go to sell this thing, please call me. And a couple years ago, he called up and said, "Yep, I'm doing something different with racing. This car's going to go away." And so I bought that from him, drove it for a little while, but not nearly long enough. And got to a point where I was like, man, if we're going to the racetrack and I'm driving something, it really needs to be one of our cars. And so I let that one go on to a new owner, and I'm sure they're enjoying it in all the ways that I never really got to. So I think that's probably, as of today, that's probably the one.
Well, Vicky's sister Jennifer usually comes on, but her favorite question is, what is your favorite car movie or car from a movie of all time?
Favorite car movie is Talladega Nights for sure.
Okay.
That has just, I mean, it is transitioned from parody to documentary. It
Mm-hmm.
just, it's
Sadly,
become,
yes.
but I mean, it's always gets a smile from me. So, favorite car from a movie,
Mhm.
probably the Ferraris in the movie Le Mans.
Okay.
Just to see the, I mean, the 917s are clearly iconic, but the Ferraris in that movie are just, they're so good looking. And to see, I can't say enough how cool it is for them to have not seamlessly, but almost seamlessly integrated real racing footage with the what script there was, right, for that movie. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think that would probably be it.
Cool. Miss Audrey, you got one more?
Can I go off script?
Of course. Like our podcast ever has a script.
You have all these questions, but I'm really curious. When you're thinking about coming on the podcast, was there something that you were thinking about that you really wanted to talk about, a story that you wanted to tell? What was going through your mind as you were preparing?
So I would say mostly just trying to think of what's current, what's recent, what's interesting to people that maybe they haven't heard yet. One of the things that I've become much more aware of um, over the process of starting this business is um, there are a very, kind of a small number of ecosystems within our motorsport family, right? And
Hmm.
so um, it's this podcasts are an excellent way to help kind of keep people informed and up to date and whatever, beyond just the like quick Instagram post of we were here and did this, right? So um one of the things that is a balance always is there are really, really, really good days and then really challenging days. And so making sure that we share with people both, how awesome and successful some of the things we're doing, and then also some of the humanity and reality and pragmatism of what daily life and what is ultimately a sporting goods factory looks like, right? So that's kind of, I'm always trying to find the right balance in conversation. We spend so much time day in and day out and here talking about things that need to be better, things that need to be done, deadlines that need to be hit, around and remember, oh, by the way, we started something really friggin' awesome and it's going pretty well. That's an important change in tone to strike when I come onto some of these programs.
The non-engineer tone. I drive Vicky crazy. She's like, you, you don't rest. You just keep going. And I'm like, cause it could get better. But
Right. Absolutely.
no worries. All right, sir. Well, we have, I think we have roughly 50 more questions for you just in our stupid story time questions. So, love to talk to you some more at one point or another. And look forward to following along and seeing how these cars goes, and depending on if Vicky's can hear me or not, perhaps placing an order at one point in our future. But if people want to order a car and get in line before us, how would they find you and keep up with what you guys are doing?
Yeah, so fieldsautoworks.com has all the most recent specs on the cars, all that stuff. We have a contact section that you fill out in order to get. We'll reach out with the order guide with all of the different options and some of the other details on the cars. Besides that, our social media is usually fairly active. We've had some rotating help with that from some generous folks in our community who are good at those things, and so our social media tends to have some pretty up-to-date stuff and maybe some behind the scenes that you wouldn't get from like the website. We're Fields Auto Works, 3 separate words, works with an O, on Facebook, and then at Fields Auto Works, all one, on Instagram. And I strongly encourage people to take a look at both the social media and the website together to get a little more full picture of who we are and what we're working on at any given moment.
Like I said, I used to like you more until I saw the price, and I'm like, that's way too low. I could do this. This is terrible. Like, I need to be tempted. That's not right. That's just not right, Rob. You're selling them way too cheap. Audra, we got to talk.
Seriously.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for coming on, and appreciate it. And we will bother you again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.